Hi, everyone. My name is Diann, and I'm from Fairfax, Virginia, in the United States. Today, I'll be reading Can I Touch Your Hair by Charles Waters and Irene Latham. This book is from the poetry genre, which means the story is told through poems that share the characters' thoughts and feelings. Before we start reading Can I Touch Your Hair, let's learn a few things or a few words that you'll hear in the story. These will help us understand how Charles and Irene are feeling. So the first word is stereotype. And a stereotype is a belief about a group of people that isn't always true. For example, thinking that all boys like sports or all girls like pink. These ideas aren't fair because everyone is different. Listen for moments in the story when people might assume something that isn't true. The second word is privilege. And privilege means having an upper hand that others may not have because of who they are or how they look. For example, some people may be treated unfairly or differently due to how they look, their culture, or their background. Think about how that might show up in this story. The third word is identity. And identity means who you are. Your family, your culture, and your experiences are all part of your identity. Your name, your hair, your language, and your traditions can also be part of it. As we read, listen to how Charles and Irene show their identities throughout their poems. Keep in mind the words stereotype, privilege, and identity, and let's see how they appear in this story. Can I Touch Your Hair? A poem of race, mistakes, and friendships. The Poem Project. When our teacher says pick a partner, my body freezes like a ship in ice. I want Patty Jean, but Madison has already looped arms with her. Within seconds, you never know what he's going to say. Charles is the only one left. How many poems? Someone asked. About what? Do they have to be true? Mrs. Vandenberg holds up her hand. Write about anything. It's not black and white. But it is. Charles is black, and I'm white. Writing partner. Mrs. Vandenberg wants us to write poems? Finally, an easy project. Words fly off my pen onto the paper, like writing is my superpower. The rest of the time, my words are a curse. I open my mouth, and people run away. Now I'm stuck with Irene. She hardly says anything. Plus, she's white. Her stringy, dishwater blonde hair waves back and forth as she stutter steps towards me. My stomach bottoms out. Hello, I say. Hi, she says. I surprise myself by smiling at her. She smells like a mix of perfume and soap. We stare at her sneakers. Before I ask, so what do you want to write about? She shrugs. I say, how about her shoes? Hair? Then we can write about school and church. She takes a deep breath. Okay, I match it. Let's start there. So far, Charles and Irene have been paired together for a poetry project. They don't know each other very well and both seem a little nervous. Charles wonders if Irene understands what it's like to be him, and Irene isn't so sure what to say. They're both trying to figure out how to connect. Hair. Now my hair is long and straight, a curtain I can hide behind. But once when I was little, I begged for an afro, so Mom cut my hair short like a boy's and gave me a perm. I fluffed it with a pick as big as it would go, until my brothers laughed and called me a circus clown, without the red nose. Strands. On a random Tuesday on the bus, Dennis asks me, can I touch your hair? He pets it before I can respond. It feels like a sponge, he says. My fists clench and my face gets hot. You need to learn to wait for an answer before asking permission, I tell him and pat his hair. Hard. Oh, how about that? Your hair feels like a mop, I say. I keep my fists ready, but he turns away. Playground. After lunch, I skip past the swings and basketball court to the spot by the fence where the black girls play freeze dance. I watch for a few minutes, hoping Shonda will invite me to join them, instead of me having to ask, can I play? I smile when Shonda comes over, but she doesn't smile back. You've got the whole rest of the playground, she says. Can't we at least have this corner? Fresh start. Some kids huddle together by the swings, gabbing about the football game when I spot JR and Nicholas. They're the only two friends who came by last summer when I invited everyone to swim in our pool. When I walk over, JR says, come on, man, stay away from us. Nicholas breaks in. Your mouth is like a race car that never stops to refuel. The group shakes with laughter, and I can't believe my friends would play me dirty like that. My body crumples before I mope over to Irene, who's watching some girls play freeze dance. I plop down next to her. Want to work on a project? Ghost. There's a new student at school who I haven't met yet. He goes by the name Ghost. At least that's what his new friends, all the same color, call him. I introduce myself. Hey Ghost, my name's Charles. His pasty skin heats up faster than a summer's day. My name's Paul, he says, leaving my outstretched hand to dangle. I realize I'm a few shades too dark to be allowed to call him by his nickname. Geography. When Mrs. Vandenberg points at the US map and asks, "Why do we call this region the Black Belt?" I stretch my hand high, but she calls on Patty Jean instead. Patty Jean leans forward like she's sure she's right. Because black people live there. Mrs. Vandenberg's face squinches like a rotten peach, and her voice comes out sour. Of course not, Patty Jean. Use your head. I sink down into my seat. Patty Jean's answer is my answer. I learn when it comes to black and white, sometimes it's best to press my lips closed and not say anything at all. Forgiveness. I start walking home from school when I hear my name called. I turn around. It's him. Yes, him. The one who the one who once asked me, "Why do you always try to act like one of us?" All because I earned my A+ report card, pushing through homework instead of playing video games, not saying "you ain't" or "you is" or "I'm doing good." "Hey man," he says, "I'm sorry for what I said to you a while back." I freeze in shock before matching his extended hand with my own. "Wow, thanks man," I say. "That means a lot. I'm curious though, what made you apologize to me?" "Well," he says, "last week a couple of African Americans asked me the same question I asked you." Apology. When Shonda presents her family tree to the class, I see all the top branches are draped in chains. "Because my ancestors were slaves," she says. I swallow. I want to say, "I'm sorry," but those words are so small for something so big. Still, I want to try, so I write it on a scrap of paper and find her library book and tuck it inside. At this point of the poem, we can see that there's a bit of a character change within Irene and Charles. At first, they were both nervous and unsure, making quick assumptions to how people treated them and making quick judgments and even statements in response. But now they're starting to respect and understand their classmates and the people who may have wronged them, and even people that they have wronged. And they're realizing that everyone comes from different backgrounds, but you can still create connection through honesty and empathy just by looking a little deeper beyond the surface and see the intentions behind one's actions, not just what the actions seem to look like on the surface. Officer Brassard. When I watch the news, I can't believe when I see people who could pass as my family being choked, pummeled, shot, killed by police officers. I remember the time when I tried to hop a chain-linked fence, my low-top sneakers got caught, and I couldn't get down. That's when Officer Brassard happened to drive by. He stopped, helped me untwist myself, and promised to keep that embarrassing moment to himself. He even bought me a popsicle later that day to help me cool off my shame. A gift for being awesome, he said. Yet when the police officers on TV are pale as a cloud, just like Officer Brassard, it makes my heart twist without any hope of being disentangled. News. I always know when the news is bad because Papa clicks off the TV when I walk in. "Let's go to the park," he says. He swings me high and higher. Doesn't stop until I ask him to. We feed bread to the geese, race up the hill. We watch a caterpillar climb a blade of grass. Only then does he tell me about Trayvon, about Ferguson, Missouri, what happened and why. We stare at the clouds, how they drift and disappear. "Sometimes it's raining," he says. I swear I can hear the thunder crack. Later, when I snag a French fry off of Papa's supper plate, that fire still blazes in his eyes as he pops my hand. "Don't your children understand what respect means?" Sleepover. I want to go to my cousin Ronnie's sleepover tonight, so I asked Mom and Dad. "No can do, kiddo," Dad says. "That's a rough neighborhood, especially in the evening." "But Dad," I say, "I hang out there after school at least once a week." "Baby, that's during the day," Mom says. "Why didn't anyone ever tell me this before?" I ask. "Because sometimes in life," Mom says, There are things you aren't supposed to know until it's necessary. Why Aunt Sarah doesn't go downtown after dark. Sky, black. Streets, black. Faces, black. Fear, white. Bedtime reading. After homework, I read The Black Stallion for the third time. I imagine I'm Alec, coaxing that horse with seaweed, and it's me the stallion is saving when he stomps out the snake. When I find a note from Shonda tucked inside the pages, I can't wait to tell Charles. Sorry for freezing you out of the freeze dance, it says. I smile, the same way Alec does when the stallion nuzzles him for the very first time. Author visit. Irene and I stand in line, cradling our books like newborn kittens. We can't stop smiling. We're about to meet an author. Her name is Nikki Grimes. We both love her book about kids in some place called the Bronx, going through life's up and downs, like us. I tell Irene that with her beaded earrings, twisty curls, and full lips, Miss Grimes is a mirror image of my Auntie Jackie. Irene whispers when she grows up she is going to be a writer, go to schools, and sign books. Mrs. Vandenberg says, Miss Grimes, I'd like to meet two of our biggest fans, and her faces briefly turn crimson. Her bracelets jangle as she shakes our hands, takes our books, then dashes off her name in a perfect cursive. Skipping back to class, Irene and I high-five each other, while our classmates stare at us like we're Martians. Quiet time. For the first time ever, I take a seat beside Charles. Patty Jean looks at me. Are you sure? I'm sure, I say. Patty Jean shrugs and takes off her backpack, sits on my other side. I tell Charles about a book I'm reading, and he doesn't interrupt me once. Hey, Charles, I say, thinking about how much I like being sandwiched between two friends. Show Patty Jean what Nikki Grimes wrote inside your book, and he does. Blooming flower. I'm sitting next to Irene in class, and everyone is working on the poem project. It's as quiet as a rock, except for the constant shushing being sent to our direction. Classmates are staring, giving us an evil eye. It's not helping. Shutting up is not an option when Mrs. Vandenberg walks over and says, Irene, I never thought I'd ever say this to you, but you need to be quiet. Dear Mrs. Vandenberg, here we are, still getting used to each other, our sideways glances turning into high fives and hanging out together during quiet time. We smile when we learn that we both like books but not sports. We nod our heads over cool shoes and colorful laces. Now we see each other as individuals, vegans, horseback riders, readers. We share hurts like being left out at recess and getting into trouble with our parents. Sometimes we say the wrong thing. Sometimes we misunderstand. Now we listen. We ask questions. We are so much more than black and white. P.S. Hey, Mrs. Vandenberg, what's our next writing project going to be? The theme of Can I Touch Your Hair is about respecting identity and building bridges between people, as it reminds us that everyone has their own story shaped by race, culture, and experiences, and that those stories deserve to be heard. By the end, Charles and Irene shows us that poetry and open conversation can help people connect across barriers. It's a message about choosing to understand over judgment and seeing one other as equals, not stereotypes. When we do that, we make our world a fairer and kinder place to be.